What's up, Footer Nation? Gary Hootenholla here, and welcome to another episode of the NYBS radio show, right here from the great state of New York. Sorry that we're starting a little bit late. I got stuck at a paranormal lecture I was just doing before this. We had a packed house, and by the time we were all done, I've been talking to everybody after the lecture. And next thing you know, I looked and I'm like, I had to get my ass right back home so we can do this. So, what's up, Mike?
Hey, buddy, how you doing tonight?
Good. How are you, man?
Busy. I'm doing good. Can't complain, man. Just taking it one day at a time and keeping the boots on the ground, as you know. Trying to get more data. Been not really posting up on the Facebook scene and all the other areas. Just trying to keep my notes and formulate what I can find and see, and then eventually, I'll share with the rest of the world. Nothing new to share. Same old stuff. Gonna get out there in about 2 Saturdays from now with a couple of guys I know, and we're going to be heading back down to Franklin Parker Preserve. One of the guys is coming from my area, and he's been there before, and we're looking forward to another camp out and more research. So it's going to be a pretty good one.
That's awesome. I mean, at least you're getting out. That's all that matters. It always seems like the hardest thing to actually get out into the woods.
Oh, definitely, man. Especially when you have families, with jobs and school.
Yeah,
You're booked, man. You're really booked.
book.
And it's
Yeah,
tough to find time. So we have to find time for ourselves, though. It's important we have that mental break away from the monotony of our work and life. So
yeah. You need that woods time. You know what I mean? And what's up, Long Island Bigfoot? Thanks for joining as always. We love you, man. Um, but yeah, so it's like it's just the idea of trying to get out in the woods and do the work. And I always that's why I've been really quiet, kind of like you. Like I've been kind of quiet with certain things, only because the way I perceive it for myself in the NYBS is that if I'm not doing any work and then boots on the ground, I don't have anything to say because
yeah,
I'm not going to sit here and recycle the same material over and over and over again.
I'm
Like
the
I'm
same
just
boat, man.
yeah, I don't. I
I'm the
want
same
to,
boat.
I want that new stuff. I want the new theories. I want trying new stuff. New ideas. I'm glad we're having this, tree structure show because I'm just getting so kind of over, you know, Bigfoot TV, where it's like,
I agree.
tree knocks,
It's, yeah,
tree structures,
same
whooping,
spewed
hooting,
stuff.
and hollering out in the woods. Like, all right, we understand that these phenomena happen, and I get it. But in the same sense, because everybody's so focused on this stuff, they're not actually don't really. There's nothing new. There's really nothing
Yeah.
new in rock stacks and rock piles.
Yeah,
Blah blah
it's all the same things of repeats over and over
blah.
again. It's like, okay, show me something different. Show me some science behind what you found. And
Yeah, yeah,
I see, like I told you before, there's more and more new people getting involved in this, and I can see that they have that tenacity to want to learn, they
yeah.
want to see, they want to do, but there's proper ways to do this, and
Yeah.
as I mentioned to you, I think this new platform we're going to be presenting here going forward, um, where we're going to talk about tree structures, we're
Mm-hmm,
going to talk about what to look for. We're going to
mm-hmm.
even dive into down the road in later dates print casts, everything, audio recordings, video recordings. We want to present everybody with techniques that are tried and true, that have worked. And if we can set that precedence to everybody and have that, spew through the Bigfoot community where it's done properly, now we're ruling out those fakes or the people
Yeah.
who don't want to do the work and just sit there and take pictures. Let's weed out those people and get the people who are truly doing the research. Let's get them up front and see what they're presenting because they're the ones who are doing the citizen science behind this work, and they're going to eventually present something that's tangible, and we can go, wow, that needs further investigation. Not the same old rock picture, tree structure, footprint, with nothing attached, just a print. Where was it? There's no name. What town? What city? Where were you?
Mm-hmm.
What was the conditions? It's just a print. And when I see those things, I flip the page, man. I'm not interested.
No, exactly. I totally agree with you. And like I say, and it's always like, Mike, my buddy Mike from Long Island Big, but he says they are important, but really nobody understands them. I couldn't agree more. Every piece of evidence, anything that's possible, probable, that we look for is important in some way. I think what gets overshadowed though is, it's almost like ghost hunting. When you're out ghost hunting, you're doing an investigation, you're doing a session, and then people get stuck on feelings. I feel this, I feel that, I feel this, I feel that. And which is great. Like, feelings have a big part of why we do the work. But unfortunately, when you start and talk about your feelings the whole time, the rest of the stuff around it gets lost. We're not really asking the right questions to get the recordings. We're not, trying to, get REM pods to go off and things like that, only because we're only talking about, well, I feel this and I feel that. So we get
Right.
distracted. And the same
Yeah.
thing in the Bigfoot phenomena. We get distracted when we look at a tree structure and we're like, all right, well, this is cool, tree structure, tree structure. Well, and like you say, no one's really, I mean, I want to say no one. I apologize for that. Let me retract that. A lot of people aren't going in deep to what one structure is, and that's what we're here to do tonight, is kind of dig deep into them. People may agree, people may disagree. Neither one of us care either way, but what we want to do is try to give you an outside look, a better look, two separate looks on what what our opinions are about when it comes to tree structures, because it's
Yeah.
very important to really dive deep into these.
Great. And it's just, and again, these are our opinions.
Mhm.
Don't take them verbatim. These are just opinions. And
Opinions.
it's when you start really getting into Bigfoot research and start reading the material, the books that are presented by past researchers, you kind of see how everything falls into play. It's all the same knowledge and rhetoric that, hey, this guy said the same thing as this guy. Let me go back to this book and take a look and see what he said. Maybe I can see a difference between the two books. Maybe there's something different between the knowledge,
Mhm.
and when it comes to tree structures, I volunteered with a local park system. I built trails in the woods, and we had to look at all different scenarios when we see these tree structures. One of them, mentioned about, okay, is it near a large area where there's a hiking community or a mountain biking community? Is it easily accessible from the road where somebody can come in and just make something up and walk away? Or
Mhm.
was it truly somewhere deep in the woods that somebody created to as a survival shelter? And when we think of a survival shelter, we must not just going to fit us. We don't need anything crazy, and we as humans and people tend to build around us. We don't
Mhm.
build bigger, larger structures in that big open area. We tend to enclose ourselves in for protection. So
Mhm.
we want to protect ourselves. We're in the wilderness. We don't know what's out there, but I'm going to build something around me, enough to give me room to move around, but enough to also protect me. I'm not going to build some 25-foot tall tree structure that's got a 15-foot wide base, And that's where I get into that. When you look at these tree structures, get in there, take a shovel with you. You don't need a big shovel. Take a little hand scoop, and scoop around the base of that tree. Don't touch it. Don't disturb it. Check for a couple of things. Make sure the root ball is there. And if the tree is just snapped or deadfall, if there's no root ball, okay, is the tree limb base, is it jammed in the ground? Take a measurement. How far? How wide is that base? You can take a standard tape measure that you get from the craft store, and you can wrap it around that tree and see how wide they are. You can't get one of those. You can get one of the basic ones that you get a little, lever here. You can pull it out, it retracts, and keep it in your pocket. You know, but look at that root ball. Dig around it. Is there root there? Is there no root? Is it chopped like a hatchet style, or is it cut blade style? Is it jammed in there? These are things to look at, and then look at the overall length of this thing. Take a measurement. Take a tape measure, and measure how what the length is. Jot it down in a notepad where you found it, the location. Put GPS coordinates, all your measurements. Do the same for the other side. Now you've got that TP structure, so called. See what you can find, and when you record this stuff, now you have material to fall back on. But the key thing is going to be is your environment. Like you said, Gary, we're out there. We're focused on one thing. We're not looking at the big picture, what's around us. We're focused on that tree limb. But take a look around. Is there more around us? Did a storm come through and knock these trees down? Take a look. Walk out a good mile and see. Look up at the tops of the trees for any large openings. We have to see what possibly could have caused this. And if there's no fathomable reason what caused it, then we know, okay, something created this. Now we have to look into what might have created it.
Yeah.
That's what it comes
And
down to.
no, it really does. And one thing I've always found interesting about tree structures and like, how we build things is this. When we find teepee structures in the woods that we obviously know are human made, right? You can tell a human made them just by how they're made. But let's even get rid of like the structure itself. You would see human interaction all around that structure. Okay, we do know that Bigfoots are the stealth ghost of the forest, right? That you can't really, we don't find a lot of prints and stuff like that. But this is where my argument comes in, is as a biological being, if Bigfoot is a biological being, and we're just going to leave it at that, that they would leave footprints, drag marks, heel marks, toe marks, all kinds of marks all around a structure, because it's physically impossible for something to weigh that much to be that stealthy when they're
Yeah,
actually building something. You're talking about building things that you would be going on the toes, then on the balls of the heel, bending over, lifting up,
yeah,
shuffling your feet. I have pictures I showed up my last structure or my last lecture of a glyph that I do, because I do glyphing. That's like my main thing that I've been doing for the last 5 years. And I have a glyph that a rock actually got moved within the quadrant. I make quadrants. And right in front of the quadrant is a 14-inch footprint that you can see that is dug in on all the toe sides, because
okay,
when the creature actually bent over, it
yep,
dug all the way
Doug,
down to then just slightly move the rock. It wasn't a major move, but it was enough to see that something moved on a
yeah,
very slight, angle. And then on top of that, normally I'd be like, well, a deer probably kicked it or an animal kicked it, things like that. But then finding the footprint and actually seeing where the toes are dug into, where all the weight pressed to move that little rock, you would see the same exact thing during tree structure movement, especially some of
exactly,
these giant tree structures where you have giant bog, like they're basically trees, right? Giant trees that are X'd up and all over the place. And you would have to see the drag marks. You would have to see the amount of weight that and the pressure that would be on that specimen would be insane, regardless of how strong you are. Like when I
yeah,
go to the gym and do squats and stuff like that, all that pressure is on my heels. I'm going to
yep,
leave an indent somewhere.
exactly.
And I think a lot of people miss that.
Yeah, exactly. You said you got some sub, 600 to 800 pound being. It's going to leave some sort of imprint in that ground. It's going to smush those leaves down. It's going to smush what we call in trail building the duff layer. Okay,
Yeah.
which is the broken down particles of leaves and branches over the seasons. So you get that duff layer, which is a squishy layer, and then below that you have your sediment layer, which is your sand or your soil layer. It's definitely going to show some sort of imprint, especially when you're 6 to 1,000 pounds.
Yeah.
Like you said, even picking those trees up, trying
Yeah.
to get them and moving them, that's weight distribution. You're going to be
Yeah.
unsteady and plopping it down.
Mhm.
So it's definitely it's good key points to know that. Like you look around that tree structure for those prints to see if you can see something. Then now you have tangible evidence that something did create this, and you can cast those prints. If you have a good print, I take a little can of air and just blow off the pine needles and blow off some of the loose leaves and see what's below it. I don't tend to like to keep the loose leaves in the cast print because now it takes away from that depth, of that print,
Mhm.
you know. And it's important to look, like I said, at the whole surrounding area, and
Mhm.
see what's there. Like you said, look at the ground. That's the key thing too. Is there's
Yeah.
look at the ground. Something's definitely going to be there.
Yeah, and that's always been my argument with that kind of stuff. I mean, from a biological being. But this is where in the spiritual and like, the paranormal aspect of the Bigfoot, this is where I would have to then kind of agree with what they kind of talk about is, these structures like basically magically appear, right? And then
Yeah,
they're there and there's no sign at all that something created it, something built it, something did anything with it. I mean, so then you have that aspect of it too, which would be kind of a physical, manifestation and manipulation of things
yeah,
by an entity that obviously still isn't leaving any marks. So I can kind of understand why on that side of the key, on that side of the coin, basically, why they would think those kind of things, and they could be right also, because maybe that we're wrong and they're right, and vice versa. We're not here to talk about right or wrong, but we're here to
Right.
talk about is logic. And for me personally, the logic would state that, yeah, and like actually, here's a good point. Our buddy Mike from Long Island, he's awesome at this stuff.
The
I like
coloring.
to
Yeah.
check. I like to check the color of the wood at the breaks to see how fresh it is. Mike, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, definitely, man. That's a good point, Mike. You made there. You know, that tells you how fresh it is. Is it a recent break? And when you look at those tree breaks and that color, okay, smell it. Smell that wood. How fresh does it smell? Because you can tell, narrowed down a pinpoint time frame of when that tree could have possibly fallen and how old it's been down by looking at the color, by smelling it, by touching it. Is it still moist? If you take a piece of it and cut it off and you put it between two pieces of metal, does it shed water? That's a freshness level. So you should be able to tell from that color when this potentially tree fell and how long it's been down. Of course, we get the older trees; they're going to be more gray, more rotted. There's no moisture in them. So those you can tell have been down quite some time for at least, depending on the tree type, at least a year. You know, and again, it all comes into play in this whole tree structure thing now. What to look for. So we look, what to look for. Like you said, Mike, another key point is looking at the color, getting in there, smelling it. How fresh does it smell? Is it still wet and moist? If take your knife and poke it, is it soft or hard? If it's pretty hard still and it looks like a good color, it's within a couple days at least a minimum of 3 days falling. So, and then again, look at that base, look at the root,
Mm-hmm.
look around the ground for footprints. So, excellent points, excellent points.
And on top of that,
Yes,
one thing we also have to know too is, once again, it comes back to knowing the woods, which you hear me preach all the time. One of the problems that I see in the field of Bigfoot research is that people just don't understand what these trees are. They don't know what a hemlock is. They don't know what all these, different softwoods, hardwoods, the maples, the oaks, and all these things in the branches, and all these different variations of species of trees. So that's another thing, is like, learn your trees. I mean, definitely learn your trees. Actually, I have a book I can show that it's all about trees, because once again, I'm in school. I'm going to be a scientist. I'm going to be a biologist. Like, that's what I'm doing, and that's the stuff that I study for fun. Like, you'll see me in the woods doing this for fun.
that's
Just
what it's about.
learning things, because it's just about learning.
Yep,
One thing I can definitely say is learn your trees, because when you look at tree structures, guess what? If all of a sudden you have all these different limbs from different, species of trees laying up on a structure, that's going to be one of my first, and one of your first telltale signs that something created this. It's not
right,
deadfall. Mother Nature will stack wood upon wood and make it look amazing, because
yeah,
she does amazing things. But you
definitely,
got to really look at the species of trees. Look at is there moss on the trees? Is it coming from the north side? Is it, once again, moss grows on the northern sides of things. What kind of moss is it? Is there trees in the area that have that type of moss on the branches that they're stacking? Is there a fungus on the trees? Different types of fungus. Is there mushrooms? Look at the mushrooms in the area. There's a lot to dissect from one tree structure that, a lot of people, they just kind of look at them and they automatically make an assumption based on, well, this is weird. It doesn't belong. And, a Bigfoot could have made this. Kind of like tree bends.
yeah,
I hate people that do tree bends only because it's, 9 times out of 10, a snow load. They're like, but Gary, it's
yeah,
under a rock. There's a
yeah,
rock. There's a rock on top of the tree bend. No, the tree bent, and now the tree continues to grow. So the tree will grow under the rock and up on the other side. Same thing when it goes over sticks. I'll be the first one to tell you. In the past, when I first started in this field, I was one of those people that got excited about tree bends, and I would be telling you all day that, oh my God, this is so cool. It makes no logical sense. Blah blah blah. But
yeah,
once I learned and did more studying and understood how the forest works and how the snow works, especially in New York, and freeze and thaw, and these things of these birch trees and sapling trees that can bend very easily,
yeah,
then it puts into perspective, well, this is all it is. And it doesn't matter the size of the tree. It could be a giant tree. The tree is still going to grow. The tree is still
exactly.
going to bend. And I see all these tree bends that people post, and I'm just like,
Yeah,
why? Like, it's snow
yeah,
load. It's snow load.
yeah,
But I understand. I do understand because I was one of those people. So Footer Nation, like I say, I'm far from perfect. I've made plenty of mistakes. But what we're trying to do is like remove the mistakes that Mike and I have made in the past doing this research. So then you guys and ladies are starting from the slate of, all right, well, that's what this is, but this it may be different than that.
exactly. And one of the, down here by me, in our state lands, our forest lands, we're full of pines, and pines, basically bend and flex with snow load. We have ones called pygmy pines down here where they don't grow no more than 4 or 5 foot tall. And when you're walking, you can see through these pygmy pine groves for miles. And
Mm-hmm.
I remember in the winter walking through these things, and I'm watching these pygmy pines that were like 4 feet tall are so bent over from snow load. And I'm going, these things really have some good give to them.
Yep.
They're strong, they're not breaking, but they are
Yep.
flexible enough to handle that snow load. And
Yeah.
the same with the larger pine trees down here.
Oh yeah.
Our pine trees are top heavy,
Yeah.
so we're gonna get that snow load on the top. And these things
Mhm.
really do bend,
They
but
bend. Yeah.
they come back in the summer, and you
Yeah.
can tell a snow load break because the trees will basically snap at a
Mm-hmm.
certain give point. So you'll have those splinters that stick up, and you can see where it's splintered from the snap when it loaded.
Mm-hmm.
If you have somebody who has taken a tree and breaking it, you can do the experiment yourself out in your backyard. Go in your backyard, find a couple of different types of tree limbs, about an inch, and break them. See how they break, and then you can tell and feel it, literally feel how the pressure it takes to break a little pine, limb or an oak limb or, a cedar limb. And cedar is another heavy, hard substance.
Mm-hmm.
We look at these cedar trees down in these cedar swamps, that takes a lot of pressure to snap those trees. Okay.
Yeah.
If something is taking a cedar tree, like this fat and round, and you're 8, 9, 10 feet up, there's a snap. I'm gonna look at that and go, wow, okay. I'm looking around what caused that because cedar that far up is pretty thick, pretty heavy. It's a hardwood. And I'm like, something's causing that to snap. And then, again, look at your weather satellites, your past satellite history. Go out to the USGS and look up storms in the area. All that is historical data. And then
Mm-hmm.
you can correlate everything you're finding along with actual physical scientific data from the USGS sites for downbursts and thunderstorms and lightning and hail. Now you have that database you can match to what you find, and if there is no correlation between the two, and now you have something tangible to look at. Okay, what else is there that could cause this? And that's the win the citizen science. Like I said, you said I'm not
It's
perfect
citizen
either.
science. That's what it
Yeah,
is.
I'm not perfect either, man. It's trial and error, figuring things
Everything
out.
is.
I always say, like I said before in my last podcast we did, don't rush into the woods to find something. Take
Mm-hmm.
your time, look around, look at your surroundings because there's everything is everywhere. You just need to know what to look for. Don't rush. Take your time, take it all in. Look at every tree limb and look at something that might look out of the ordinary. We're so focused sometimes as new researchers that I need to find a tree limb, I need to find a tree structure, I need to find a footprint. And we're focusing just on that and not looking at what's around us in the big picture.
So Mike brought up a good point. So what happens? What's your take on an old tree structure? So a tree structure that's been there for a while. So there would be no sign. So we have really all the sign would be diminished. I mean, it would be there's probably still sign there in one way, shape, or form, but you're not gonna. It's going to be a lot harder to find it.
It
And on top
is.
of the weather and things like that. So
Yeah.
what do you
I think
think
you
about
gotta
it?
I think you gotta look at when you come upon an old tree structure like that, if you've never seen it before, check your area if you have never been there for major roads, fire roads, campgrounds, nearby residential areas. Is it easily accessible? Somebody could have created this 3 years ago, and try to look up weather maps too for that area. Was there a major storm through here that I found it say, in December? And look at if it's old, you got that gray colored ashy wood. Okay, I'm going to go at least a year out, if not 2 years, and see if I can find anything on the weather that may have been for that area, any historical data. If not, then I'm going to look a little more at it and go, okay, I'm going to look at the wood. I'm going to see if that thing is, say, 20 feet in the air, I'm going to look about anywhere from 4 to 10 feet up. Maybe there's something stuck in the old bark, okay, or a crack in the wood. Maybe there's a hair. Maybe there's an old muddy print or something. Get inside, smell it. And then again, this is why I say I'm going to take those old structures. I'm going to pull, if I can, one of them out of the ground to feel the pressure, what it takes. Now, over time, sediment and layers build up so they could sink the tree down further. So I want to see how far it's down. I'm going to check the end to see how it's cut. And if it's an older tree structure, is that end cut with a saw blade? Because now if it's an older tree structure and cut with a saw blade, somebody made it. Okay, if it's a chopped with a hatchet end or some sort of a cutting tool, okay, somebody made it, and you can tell by looking at those cuts. You can see if it's a razor cut, like sharp, precise. There's no chopping and pitting where people are just chopping, chop, 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 chop. It's a saw. It's a fluid motion. These are things I'm going to look for when it comes to the older ones. And those are the harder ones to really analyze because weather and time and nature have taken its toll on them. Those things degrade. As I mentioned, those posts break down and they'll sink deeper into the ground. So now you have a deeper pole stuck in the ground. People come upon that who really don't do the due diligence. Go, wow, it's in there pretty good. It must have took somebody big and muscular to put that in there, or some sort of tool or machine. Now their minds are thinking, okay, could it have been a Bigfoot? That put this in there. It's so far down in there. But it's same way as looking at the newer structures. You got to do the same for the older structures. Take one out, look at it, get inside, measure. You know, jot down your notebook. Everything you can, because if you come upon another one, say 5 or 10 miles away, now are they similar or are they dissimilar? Are they the same radius or same tree type pitch, same trees? Like you said, certain trees. Are they all cedar? Are they all birch? Are they all oak?
Mm-hmm.
Are they similar? Okay, and if they're not, now you have something to jot down in your book. Take those measurements and try and find something that is similar. And this is where it comes when you're logging your data. And if you come across something new, say 20 miles away, you go, hey, I remember seeing something like this over in this area. My measurements match up to this. So either this could be the same person doing this or the same being doing this. Okay. Logging is another good example. There's some logging upstate New York. Look at the loggings. See what's around there. I'm sure there's a website that would tell you where they're actually purging from. They're going and hitting these massive vast forests. There's got to be a record of it. It's okay. Maybe this was from logging. They did something. Loggers are tending to know that us Bigfoot researchers are out there, and a lot of them like to play games on us and take their tools and make tree structures thinking that a Bigfoot made it, because they have the material to do it and they have the heavy equipment to pick up those big logs, And I've heard cases before where loggers, fooled a few people, and it came out and it was in news, and it's like, oh, they got us, they're playing games with us now, and like it spreads, man, like wildfire. So that's
No,
my
and that's
thing.
the thing. Yeah. And I would say I would have a different, a little different take on an older structure. If I, it's probably a lot of people probably be like, why would you do this? And what I would do is if I saw a structure that looked like a Bigfoot structure, but there was no sign. The key thing I think Mike and I, agree on is there has to be some kind of visible work being done on the tree. We can agree on that, right, Mike?
Oh, definitely.
So if I didn't see that anymore, so say we're dealing with an older structure, right? I would just rip it down. What I would do is I'm a big, GPS nerd. So I'm constantly GPSing, tagging, waypointing everywhere I am, on my little Garmin GPS, since we have these little tools. And then I'll just put where I am. I would rip down the whole entire structure because we never hear about people really ripping down structures. They just look at them. I
True.
would then stack it all next to the tree. If it's an older structure, that either may or may not being used, still being used. Hypothetically, if it is a
I see.
Bigfoot structure, they would either rebuild it and or rebuild another one in the same area. So even if it's
Completely.
not on the same tree, then I would then start doing my circumference of being like, all right, well, here's my point. I had a tree structure here. Now I'm gonna go into my next circle. There's nothing here. I'm gonna go to my next boundary circle. Nothing here. Now I'm gonna go to my outside boundary circle and see if they now built a brand new tree structure. Now, if they do that, then it would basically, then I would have brand new material. I would
Yeah.
have something working with it because I would have to see some kind of manipulation of the ground, of the sticks themselves. It's almost like, I'm toying with them. Be like, all
Yeah.
right, well,
Yeah.
if this is really yours, I'm alpha now. So because
Yeah.
I'm alpha,
Played it.
I'm
Yeah.
taking it down, and now I'm gonna make you rebuild another one. And if it doesn't, if one doesn't get rebuilt, then in my opinion, I'd be like, all right, so you're not using this one anymore because obviously it's not important enough where you need to now rebuild another one,
Yep.
or they're no longer in the area anymore, so they're not using it anyway,
Right.
or now or maybe it just wasn't made by a Bigfoot. Maybe it's just natural, or somebody was in the woods and these kind of things. So then in my logbook, in my field journal, I would just write those ideas down, along with the GPS coordinates, and then just go from there with it. But I think by taking an older structure, tearing it down, you're basically now being like, all right, well, it's gone. Like I now rule
Yeah.
your area. So I've come into your area. I rule your area now because I've messed with your things. Let's see if that now causes another response. And if it
Yeah.
kicked them out, and we don't know if they end up leaving, they end up leaving. You can't help that. But at the
Right.
end of the day, it's still a response.
Right. And now you have a reaction to that,
Correct.
and that you can validate now.
Yep.
I like that idea, Gary. Never thought of that. Never thought about taking it down. Now I'm
Yeah.
going to think about taking that down
And
and
I've
use
done
your
that.
logic.
Yeah, and I've done that with structures. I've actually messed them all up. I've actually moved structures. I've taken things that look like really weird in the woods, like a tree structure, which I don't know what they are, and I've actually taken them all apart, went to another tree or another area, and then laid them up against rocks or laid them up against tree and built a brand new one. And made sure that I ruffled up. Once again, I dug out the leaves around it. I made almost like a teepee, like to show that a human did it,
Yep.
because they're going to know the difference anyway, because they're going to smell and all that stuff. Your odors all over it, your greases, your body
Yes.
grease. So, but yeah, once again, you do these kind of things to provoke a response.
Exactly.
And you don't hear a lot of people doing it for whatever reason. I'm sure maybe people do. I hear people making their own tree structures, but at the end of the day, if we believe that this is a Bigfoot tree structure, then you would want to actually use what they did because they're doing it for some reason, which could be some kind of territory, some kind of marker. But regardless, even a marker saying to go this direction would still be a territory marker.
Yeah.
So for our family, I mean, it is what it is. It's kind of
Right.
like buck markings on trees. It's like when does piss all over the ground. Those are all dominant marking behaviors.
My
So this would,
territory. Keep out.
yeah, territory. So this, or come see me. So
Yeah.
this would have to be the same. I mean, in logic, this would have to be the same thing. So
Exactly.
in one way, shape, or form,
Oh, thank you. Froze up there, Gary. I'm sure if we lost him, folks.
with
Let's
no
see what
what down.
happens when he comes
Now
in.
we're back.
Yeah,
I
there you
know
go. You're back.
it's
Yeah, locked up.
we're back. It's freaking
All
Wi-Fi.
right.
I hate technology. But anyway, so with that stuff, yeah. So that's kind of what I would do with an older tree structure. I mean, I do them with the newer tree structures. But the one thing that I do never notice, and honestly, and this is why I always debate tree structures with people, because I haven't noticed it yet myself, are two things. One, I never find sign. So there's never sign that something built this thing, and that's
Yep.
and I can go into the details of being like, well, it could be old, it could be this, it could be that. Regardless, I'm not finding sign.
Yeah.
Number two, these giant trees that people are posting. The thing that I have a problem with a lot of those is that these things weigh thousands of pounds. Number one, so to try to, you ever watch Scottish games where they caber
Oh
toss?
yeah. They're
Listen,
holding those things up. They're
yeah,
lugging them.
Sasquatches are huge, right? We understand that they're huge, but how are they going to walk a giant tree like that through the woods when
Right.
there's already other trees to go around?
And why
They're
carry
gonna,
it so far? You know.
Yeah, but think about, let's not even just say that. I mean, that's one thing, but there's other trees with
Yeah,
branches. How are they
yeah,
going to carry a huge tree that has branches because they can't rip all the branches off
yeah,
through the woods and then put it in one spot? Number one.
right,
Number two, we talk about deadfall. Those big trees how many of these big downfall trees are they going to be able to lift up and something not break, something not, because they're deadfall trees that rot in the woods, unless they're very meticulous and can pick the right trees, which could be a possibility. But I
yeah,
mean, but this is all once again hypothetics.
right,
Logic still tells me that that's next to, it just doesn't make sense because there's a lot of variables there.
yeah. And we think about it, there are a lot of variables there.
Way
Again,
too
like you
many.
said, way too many. Who's going to carry those trees a distance, especially with carrying two of them? That those
Yeah.
things could be what 25 feet long. Now you're
Yeah.
in that wait, you're talking like a 200-pound tree. Okay, granted, these
Yeah.
can range anywhere from 3 to 1,000 pounds, but we don't know what they're capable of. Maybe they could
No.
carry it, but it doesn't make sense to as to
On
like you said,
uneven ground, on
uneven ground.
uneven
Yeah, and
ground
why?
in the woods,
Yeah,
carrying a tree through trees.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
that's what's kind of, I mean, if it's an open area, that's one thing, but even still, like there's going to be trees on top of trees on top of trees that they would have to walk these things through, and even if it's
exactly.
deadfall, they're going to have to pick up the large tree
Yeah,
and then bring it.
yep,
The only other thing I could think of when you get into these big trees, they would have to push them over into each other. So they
yeah,
push one way, one the other way. But now that question is there two of them, not one, but two? Are two
right.
working together to make these giant tree structures?
Yeah,
And then we also know that Mother Nature, once again, like once the ground is saturated and then these storms and winds and straight line winds come through, I mean, I've seen plenty of trees that get saturated that they uproot.
yeah,
So there's a lot. Once again, the variables are just, there's so many.
yeah. There's a lot of variables when it comes to tree structures. They're fascinating to see, and in your mind you think, okay, what could possibly cause that, and then trying to go investigate it. For me is I enjoy doing that, but
Yeah.
to sit here and without due diligence do science and look at the stuff and look at the areas and figure this out, note stuff down. I have to take tree structures as plausible.
Yeah.
You know,
Plausible. I mean,
I can't. I wasn't there when they built it. I didn't
mhm,
hear when they built it anything loud banging or crashing. I can only go by what I've read in books, my experience and investigations with ex law enforcement, as you know. These are things that we're taught to look at. We have
mhm,
to look at that evidence. We have to look at the tangible evidence. Say, okay, what is this? What caused it? How did it get here?
mhm.
And to me, when I look at tree structures, it's plausible. I'm not going to
Yeah.
say yes. I'm not going to say no
No.
because we don't truly know what the
No.
facts are we come across.
It's basically confirmation bias.
Yeah, it is. And
I mean,
100%
because
it is.
we're sitting there, coming up with ideas ourselves to make something be something, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah,
honestly, at the end of the day, what facts do we have to prove anything other than our own logic? So,
yep,
because we're in the woods with Bigfoots and we can say that Bigfoots can do these, I say, more than likely they probably can. I mean, we're not sitting here saying they can't. We're not even saying that they don't. But
right,
what we're saying is, when you look at these structures from a scientific perspective, if that's what you choose to do for your research, okay, once again, Mike and I are scientific people. We look at it from a logical standpoint, and we look at it from a standpoint of research that needs to be dissected down into numbers, in letters, and put on paper. So then it's all written down in a nice, neat report.
yeah,
So that's how we work, but that doesn't mean that's not how everybody works.
right. It's not for
So
everybody.
it's not for everybody. But if you're going to do these things and you want to end up getting the backing of people that be like, listen, you're actually doing your XYZs right now. You're not just showing me a tree structure and saying, well, Bigfoot made that. And when I ask why, um, you will ask why, you will ask why. But at the end of the day, we just can't automatically say Bigfoot did it.
Right.
because that would be like me in the ghost hunting, because I ghost hunt too, saying that Sally is the ghost of your house. Because even though I caught the name Sally say 100 times, how can I prove that to you? I can't.
Yeah.
I can have
You
a
can't.
thousand psychics come in. I can have all this stuff, but I still can't prove that Sally is there. I can even have the records that a Sally lived in the house and we catching Sally, but I still can't prove to you without a doubt 100% that the little girl woman voice that we got is Sally.
Yeah. Yep.
You can't.
You can't.
It's all
It's
probability.
yeah. And that's why it's ultra important. Like I said, when we're now doing this whole new stream casting on education. Where tonight we're talking about tree structures. We'll get into footprints. We'll get into every facet we can get into and discuss this stuff based upon our experience and what we've known, what we were trained in, and we're going to present stuff, scientifically and methodically of how we do things, and hope that the takeaway is people who are listening take some examples of what we do and now instill them in themselves and do that same science, so to speak, to find the truth behind what we're seeing. And let's
Mhm.
just not just post up a picture with no data, no backing, no information. Let's bust away from that old style and let's get into this new mainstream style, a new way of how we do things. I like somebody once told me, the old guard is there with the books and knowledge. We're the new guard. We have
Yep.
technology now to our advances. Let's use that stuff to our advance, okay, and see what we can find by using that technology and logic and think and training and put this stuff on paper and figure this out.
Yep, and I agree with Mike, and what he said, because he say this is a different. He has a different take on it. You know what I mean? And like he says, he goes in his opinion, logic applies to things that we comprehend already. Valid
Yep,
point. It's a fact.
yep,
It's very possible there's a secondary reason for the same thing we are looking at that we didn't comprehend already. Once
yep,
again, a proven fact. So things that we can't comprehend in our logical terms in our brains, then we're just going to say that, oh, it doesn't exist, or it does can't be that way. Mike and I,
yep,
Mike Whoop, we're still open to the ideas of all these things. So, for the spiritual people, what I would say is this, because I don't poo on that either. I actually do Project X in the NYBS, which looks at the paranormal Bigfoot. And I actually find at that lecture I did this past week, I released all the stuff that we've collected already for the first time to the public, and I got a really big response from it because I can't
nice,
explain it because I'm being honest about what we're getting. You can then take the information for yourself. I don't care about that, but we're going to just show what we get, because to be a researcher, you got to look at everything, just like you do ufology. You got to
yeah,
look at it as a whole. All
you
right,
have to,
that's what makes a researcher.
yep,
So, but if you're gonna do the paranormal side of the Bigfoot and you kind of think it's a spiritual being, cool, no problem. So what I would say is bring an EDI meter out with you, bring a tri-field meter out with you, bring a radio frequency meter out with you,
yep,
bring these kind of meters that measure energy, okay? And then when you find a tree structure, maybe put a K2 meter inside it and see if it lights up. See if there's a form of energy. I hear from people that's portals and all this other stuff.
yeah, yeah,
Sorry.
yeah.
And
Could it be? Oh, we lost you again, Gary. You hung up on us. Gary's in the Wi-Fi world right now, folks. We're at the
okay,
paranormal
my
Wi-Fi.
Wi-Fi.
There
Yeah,
he
it's the
goes. He's back.
Wi-Fi is awful today. All right. So, but if you think it's a portal, great. It could be a portal. So, how will we back that up scientifically? Well, that's a little bit harder because you're dealing with frequencies, energies, and you're dealing with numbers and datas. But at the end of the day, if you have a simple tri-field meter or K2 meter and you're getting readings inside of these structures, then me as a person who's of science, and Mike would be like, all right, you know what? This is what you're getting, and we
Yeah,
can't dispute that. We can go through the list of things that we think it is geologically and all this other stuff, which we may still be wrong, because now you've opened up the chapter over here of being like, you know what, maybe there is a lot more to this. Like Mike was saying, it's a secondary comprehension that we still don't understand. Um, with that, and once again, it's like we can't explain everything, and as humans, that's what we want to do.
Yeah,
So
like Mike just said in his comments too, explaining is tough without being, in the field witnessing it. That's
yeah,
why
that's
we're
another
that's
thing.
why we got to get out there and do this research, and
Yeah,
and video it, take notes, and my case back here, where right here, right there, I've got a video camcorder headset that if I'm out by myself, that thing is running constantly. And it has a,
yeah,
has a built-in gimbal, so I can also video record what I'm doing, and I can get right down and see exactly what I'm writing. So now I have it written down, and I also have now on video and MP3, images I can take of a video, and also the JPEGs and other images that are now, I have a timeline. So whenever I start doing something, if I write down, you know, a length, I'll take a video and I'll take a snapshot. So I have video and an image. Now I have two ways to look at this, and keep recording this stuff and then go back at it, And like you said too, Mike, Long Island Bigfoot, like the people like to put answers to things that they can't always explain. They try to, like you said, fill in these gaps with data or knowledge they think because they've heard it, but without doing that true check and science to check the box off, they're filling those gaps with that irrelevant data, and in their mind now they're thinking, yeah, this has got to be Bigfoot. This has to be. This is plausible. This is what I say. But in reality, we don't know, and that's why I say it's ultra important you get out there and you take your time in the woods, in the forest, look at everything, take in everything, smell, sights, your surroundings, and note it all down, jot it down. You don't need a big kit to be a researcher. You can just use the basics, like I
yeah. You don't need
showed you.
really anything. You
You
really
need the
don't
little
need
tiny tape
anything.
measure, and a notebook. That's all you really need. So,
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a if you're taking it from the way that we kind of Mike and I take it as far as from a science standpoint, you really don't need much. If you're doing it from a spiritual standpoint, you really don't need anything. You can just go wander the woods and just try to listen to the Bigfoot people, and that's what we hear a lot. People connect with the Bigfoot people, and once again, I have credible people that talk about that too. So there's many different sides and there's many different ways to do this kind of stuff that we're talking about. Like I say, this is our opinion based on research, and this is our opinion based on if you want to keep field data, field journal data, it's the proper way to do it. Now, it doesn't mean that we're right. So it doesn't mean that we're right and that we have that answer.
yeah,
Um, you know what I mean? And it's like Mike said, if someone saw a ghost, there will be 50 out of 100 people that believe, 30 and 100 people that don't believe. And it's true. I mean, you can
yeah,
explain. I just dealt with that tonight on my lecture. You have the people that will believe, you have the people that don't believe. And in Bigfoot, it's kind of like that too. You have different sectors. You have the flesh and blood sector, you have the paranormal spiritual sector, then you have the ufology sector. And none of those people are wrong. Nobody's wrong. It's a matter of fact of what your personal belief is, or more than likely what you witness yourself. And that's really what it
yeah,
comes down to, is what you witness yourself. But even what you witness yourself is different for each and every one of us.
exactly.
And once again, it pops back into your belief system.
Yep.
So any last words, and we'll wrap this up, and this will be our first one.
Yeah, I think it was a great event tonight, Gary, and I'm looking forward to the next ones that we're gonna have, and I'm hoping that people take away. We're not perfect, but we're just trying to present some stuff that we do, and hope that it
Yeah,
helps those other researchers to do more diligence in their research and become a better researcher with presenting that scientific data and reviewed data.
yeah.
And I'm looking forward to the next sessions.
Yeah, and we'll be doing another tree structure one. We can do it on paranormal type stuff. But what we can take out of this show is this. Like Mike said, have a tape measure. Research around the structure area, see if there's any interaction, shuffling, digging stuff up, things like that, to show that there was activity near the structure. If it's an old structure, like I was talking about, maybe take it down, see what happens, see if they build a brand new structure around the area. Now, obviously, if they're 25-foot trees, they're not going to come down. Just soon. But we're talking about either a small structure. So we got that. All right. Make sure you jot coordinates down. Like I say, I use GPS. If not, just make sure you have a map of the area. Jot down your notes, take your field notes. If you're into the spiritual paranormal side of the Bigfoot and don't, then what you should do is bring a K2 meter, a tri-field meter, a natural tri-field meter, something that measures energy. Put that in. If you find a structure, Just start measuring EMF and those things around the structure itself. You may get some spikes, you may not, but then you're going to have to decipher if it's a natural geological EMF from the earth, because that's what it does, or if it's actually energy that shouldn't be there whatsoever. And now you may found some kind of weirdness within the structure itself. Also, with those kind of things, start taking pictures. You may don't just use regular cameras, use full spectrum cameras, use UV cameras. See if you can maybe get something that looks different in a different light spectrum. This is for, once again, the paranormal type stuff, because as we use those in the paranormal field, you may be able to see orbs or energy or something that may be different that we're not going to see with a normal DSLR camera, or just even your cell phone camera on all your phones, because they're pretty much good at this point. So we're giving you ideas from both perspectives, from a research perspective and a paranormal perspective, because we still keep it open for everybody. And we haven't even talked UFOs, which Mike can talk UFOs one thing, because once again,
Yeah.
the Bigfoot alien connection, there's still enough there to be like, well, it could possibly be this too, because there's still enough there for it. Um,
True.
and it's our goal to basically just get the word out, and get the word out about different ways to do things, and doing it the best. And yeah, Mike uses a cell phone all the time, and he catches great stuff. So these
Yeah.
cell phones now are amazing. So that's our goal, and we just hope you take one thing out of it, and then if you don't, I mean, it's it is what it is.
Right.
We're just here to work together in the community. We're here to just better the community, and what we're just trying to do is work together in unity. All right, and that's the big key thing: working together in a cohesive unit. We don't all have to agree, but we can agree to disagree, which is totally fine. But also respect each other as humans, in this researchers, but just as humans, because humans have to be nice to each other.
Yeah. Agreed. You
You
have to.
know,
You have
you
to
know what I
treat
mean?
everybody better. You really have to.
Yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
that's where we're at. So, and that's our goal here. You know what I mean? So, we hope you enjoyed our short show. We'll be back soon with another one, and as always, keep it squatchy. We'll see you on the trail. Deuces,
All right, everybody.
everyone.